Kyrie Irving has never been viewed like a normal superstar. For some people, he's one of the most gifted basketball players who has ever touched a court. A champion, a magician with a basketball, a player capable of creating shots that seem impossible even by NBA standards. The game-winning shot in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The impossible finishes through traffic. The handles that turned defenders into highlights. Moments that cemented him as one of the most talented players of his generation. But for others, Kyrie has always represented something different. A mystery, a contradiction. A player whose career has often generated as many questions as answers. Because unlike most stars, Kyrie never seemed satisfied accepting the world exactly as it was presented to him. Whether it was basketball, media narratives, expectations, or public opinion, Kyrie developed a reputation for seeing things differently than everyone around him. And over time, that reputation became inseparable from his identity. Some people admired it, some people criticized it, but everybody noticed it. Which is exactly why Kyrie Irving and The Matrix feel like such a fascinating combination. Because at its core, The Matrix isn't really about machines. It isn't really about action. It isn't really about fighting. It's about perception. A world where billions of people accept an illusion without ever realizing they're trapped inside it. A world where comfort becomes control. And honestly, if there's one NBA player whose entire public identity revolves around looking beyond what everyone else sees, it might be Kyrie Irving. To understand why Kyrie Irving would break the Matrix, we need to understand one thing first. The Matrix doesn't trap people through force. It traps them through satisfaction. Most people imagine the Matrix as a prison, but that's not really what it is. It's a dream. A world carefully designed to give people exactly enough happiness to stop searching for something more. And that's why most people never escape. Not because they can't, because they don't want to. The illusion feels too good. The rewards feel too real. The comfort becomes too valuable. And that's where Kyrie becomes interesting. Because throughout his career, comfort has never seemed like the thing motivating him most. Think about how many times Kyrie could have simply followed the crowd, said the expected thing, taken the easy path, and avoided criticism, avoided controversy, avoided becoming one of the most discussed players in basketball. Instead, he repeatedly chose a more difficult road. Whether people agreed with him or not isn't really the point. The point is that he was willing to stand alone. And that's a dangerous trait inside the Matrix, because the Matrix survives through consensus. It survives because most people stop asking questions. The moment somebody refuses to stop looking, the system begins to have a problem. And Kyrie has built his entire identity around refusing to stop looking. That's why he'd notice things most people ignore. Most people ignore inconsistencies when they appear. Kyrie wouldn't. He'd keep digging. Not because he's stronger than everyone else, not because he's smarter, but because once Kyrie starts searching for answers, he rarely stops. And eventually that creates a problem. Not for the Matrix itself, for the belief that keeps it alive, because every illusion depends on acceptance. The moment acceptance starts disappearing, control starts disappearing too. But noticing the Matrix isn't the hardest part. Leaving it is. Because eventually the Matrix would recognize exactly what Kyrie is. A threat. Not the kind of threat that throws punches. The kind of threat that makes people think. And that's far more dangerous because if Kyrie starts seeing through the illusion, the Matrix doesn't try to destroy him. It tries to keep him. That's what makes the Matrix so terrifying. It studies people, learns them, understands them, and then gives them exactly what they want. Imagine a version of Kyrie's career where everything goes perfectly. Every championship, every award, every accomplishment, every dream, no criticism, no controversy, no setbacks, no mistakes, just success, the perfect basketball life. At first, that sounds impossible to reject. And honestly, for most people, it probably would be. Because people naturally move toward comfort, toward certainty, toward validation. The Matrix understands that. That's why it works. Not because it's stronger than people, because it understands people. It understands that most people don't want truth. They want happiness. And if happiness is convincing enough, they'll stop searching it. That's the real trap. Not pain, comfort. Anyone can reject suffering. Rejecting comfort is much harder, especially when that comfort gives you everything you've ever wanted. And that's the challenge Kyrie would face. Not whether he can see through the illusion, whether he's willing to leave it. Because eventually the Matrix would offer him a choice. Not directly, not dramatically, but psychologically. Truth or comfort, reality or satisfaction. The perfect life, or the real one. And honestly, that's where Kyrie's personality becomes fascinating. Because throughout his career, curiosity has often seemed stronger than comfort. Again and again, he demonstrated a willingness to follow questions into uncomfortable places. Even when those questions created criticism. Even when those questions created conflict. Even when those questions made life more difficult. Most people stop searching when searching becomes uncomfortable. Kyrie rarely has. That's what makes him dangerous. Because eventually the perfect world begins revealing flaws. Small flaws, tiny inconsistencies. Things most people wouldn't notice. Patterns that repeat. Moments that don't make sense. And for most people, those flaws would never matter. But Kyrie isn't most people. Once Kyrie notices something doesn't add up, the search for answers becomes more important than the comfort the Matrix provides. And that's the point where the Matrix starts losing. Because the Matrix doesn't need people to love it. It only needs them to accept it. The moment acceptance disappears, the entire system becomes weaker. And Kyrie would naturally create that problem, not because he wants to destroy the Matrix, but because he keeps looking beyond it. History is filled with people like that. People who challenged assumptions everyone else accepted. People who noticed things everyone else ignored. People who asked questions everyone else avoided. And eventually those questions changed everything. That's the role Kyrie would fall into. Not the strongest person, not the fastest, not the most powerful, the disruptor. The person who makes everyone else start looking around. The person who makes everyone else start wondering. The person who makes everyone else start questioning. And for the Matrix, that's terrifying, because questioning spreads. One person notices something, and then another, and eventually the illusion becomes harder to maintain. That's why Kyrie Irving wouldn't be the perfect person to dominate the Matrix. He'd be the perfect person to expose it. Because the Matrix only works when people stop asking questions. And throughout his entire career, Kyrie Irving has built a reputation around doing the exact opposite. Maybe that's what makes this combination so fascinating. Not because Kyrie would become the most powerful person inside the Matrix. Not because he'd control it. Not because he'd destroy it overnight. But because he'd never fully accept it. And in a world built entirely on acceptance, that might be the most dangerous trait of all. Because the strongest prison isn't built from steel. It's built from certainty. And Kyrie Irving has spent his entire career challenging it.